there's this CNN report, this news report. This little kid, they were at the zoo, and this little kid was climbing up on the bars to the gorilla pit, and the little kid was pointing at the gorilla and everything, and he fell in. And someone was videotaping this. Someone outside was videotaping this, and all of the people, we were all horrified when this little boy fell into this gorilla pit. And there was a sign that said, I think, don't feed the gorillas and don't climb up on the bar because you might slip and fall in. But he was too young to read the sign and too young to really understand. The little kid fell in, and we were horrified because this, what we would call this beast, this animal, he was in there with this beast. So this gorilla runs over there to the kid, and we're all horrified. We're watching this on CNN. And the gorilla gently picks up the little boy and holds him and grabs him and then takes him to a safe place and protects him from the other gorillas. And when I looked at that, I thought about that recently, and I said, that's life. That's how life should be. And it takes an animal, a beast, to teach us what life should be. To me, I guess you can look at it in any way, but to me, those people standing out and the person filming this kid climbing up on that fence, it's us, it's our society. And the little kid is our future, is our youth. And climbing up on the fence, that represented life and the trouble and the mistakes that youth are going to make. And when he fell in and hurt himself. That gorilla, to me, represented the justice system. The system, our system. When our kids fall in and get in trouble, the justice system, this is what they're supposed to do. Even though they look like a beast and our kids potentially come into prison to be hurt or whatever, the justice system should come because the justice system is us. And be merciful to that child, to be compassionate to that child, help that child, and protect that child like the gorilla did. Yet, in society, when we look back and look at that, none of the people were fast enough or stopped that child from climbing up. Everybody, they saw the child climbing up because they filmed it. They filmed the kid on the fence. They filmed the kid falling in. So people saw the child getting in trouble, saw the child in trouble. And the child, he too young and too inexperienced to really know what that sign meant when it said don't climb up and don't feed the gorilla. We need to be as merciful to our youth, because they all are youth, just as merciful to that youth as that animal, that gorilla, that beast was to that one child. And I challenge any and everybody to go back, look it up, CNN. I'm sure you'll remember it, and think about it. Look at it over and over again and think about it. Think of the fear, like everyone, the millions of people at home watching that, and how your heart stopped when you realized that kid had fell over in that gorilla pit. And because you knew this animal was supposed to come over, and that's what the justice system do. The justice system beats, destroys, tortures, and kills our future, our youth. That's what they do. When you think about it, when you throw your child, when we throw the youth into prisons, and don't have mercy, don't have compassion, throw them into prison, put them in adult prisons, lowering the age. That's what you think about. What you're doing. Just because that child didn't come from my wife don't mean that ain't my child, and don't mean that's not my responsibility. Think about it.
Well, it's about perceptions too, and I remember seeing that on CNN, the gorilla, and it was the fear of the gorilla, and at first, and what is this gorilla going to do to this already harmed child who was unconscious, and this, and everybody standing around is afraid, and you hear the whoa and oh no in the background, and it's a perception that we've created in society. And I think it really links to what you were saying, because even driving through the gates for me today, I've been in the Yukon correctional facilities, and I've had good friends, I've had people that I've known throughout my life who've been in those environments, and when you go through those gates, you have this perception and this feeling that it's like the fear is there. These are people who should be here, and so on. There isn't these are human beings that are institutionalized, that are it's a fear that we have generated in society. I think many of us are becoming prisoners. I think most of society is becoming prisoners. We're becoming prisoners to the institutions that that are governing our lives, that are controlling our lives. And as human beings, we're beginning to feel that in extreme ways. I've worked in government settings, I've worked in institutional settings, and I always tend to go back to a more fluid, kind of free-thinking environment where I feel like I can be human. I feel like I can cry when I hear a story. I feel like I can have a bad day. I feel like I can make mistakes. Our laws are becoming so constricting that they're creating fear in our society. I think we're all living to some extent with that, and it's driven by human needs to want security and stability. And some people in this world aren't born with that security and stability. They're born into survival mode, and to survive in a world where everybody is individualistic and thinking only of themselves it can become a very cold society, and and I guess it just makes me think of that initial perception of the whole public's view of this gorilla was that gorilla's going to harm that child. Whereas again, it took a CNN type of thing to say, wow, and everybody was moved by watching that huge animal that go over to that child and realize that was a child who needed to be connected to, who needed to be protected. So rather than putting that gorilla into a danger mode or a violent mode, it reacted with, I'm going to nurture and protect this child in this environment. And in fact, when the ambulance came when they went to take the child, the gorilla was almost protective, keeping them away. It just assumed that role, and it's a great analogy when you think about it. Our reactions today have become very fear-based, and I think again back to that issue. Many of us are feeling somewhat imprisoned by the restrictions. We're in an unnatural world, and human beings are wanting more natural, real spaces to be human, and they're becoming less and less and less. I mean, we have schools that have 3,000 kids in them, 40 kids in a classroom. Our children are going into daycare at a year or 3 months old, and coming out the other end of institutions. Maybe if they've been successful in institutions, they're coming out the other end after 30 years of being in institutions. And then we want them to be free thinkers and to be human. And then we have another part of society who isn't so blessed to be successful in the institutions, and they're born into environments of poverty, of abuse. With First Nations, oftentimes their families are fragmented right from the word get-go, and other cultures too, and into foster homes and group homes, and then they graduate into the young offenders facility, and they end up, in our prisons and jails, and they're just doing they've got another institutional kind of, they eventually graduate from the penitentiaries if ever. And that's the same for people who've been successful in institutions, hoping for retirement if they're lucky, but many feeling quite imprisoned by it.